of the Tacoma Park City Council to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Searcy.
Here.
Councilmember Landman. Here. Councilmember Dvala. Present. Councilmember Schlegel.
Here.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Here.
Councilmember Honzak.
Present.
Councilmember Wesseluk.
Here.
Great. Good evening, everyone. There are a few things, but actually before I jump into the agenda for this evening, because we will need to make an adjustment, I do just want to make a statement. There has been a recent settlement in terms of sexual harassment within our involving a former sergeant within our police department. And I want to ensure that we are sending a message that we are prioritizing a safe and respectful work environment for all of our staff. I am deeply sorry to any distress that may have been caused by the actions of the former sergeant involved in the sexual harassment allegations. And on behalf of the city, I want to sincerely apologize to Ms. Cooper for inappropriate behavior she endured. And such actions are reprehensible and entirely inconsistent with the values and policies of the city and its police department. We are working to be as transparent as we can, and we ask for your continued patience. We know that there's been a lot of questions regarding the allegations, and we just ask for your continued patience. But I am committed, and you will hear tonight as I walk through some of the upcoming agenda items. We are definitely committed to making improvements in terms of processes as well as accountability. There will be a public statement that will be coming out in a few days, but I want to provide this opportunity to just clearly communicate to our community. I fully understand the impact that this has had on members of our community and our staff, and I want to assure everyone that we are working collectively to institute change to ensure that this incident or incidents like this never happen again. With that, I'll turn things over to our city manager, who will speak to what we are doing in the immediate future.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. First of all, staff, myself and my staff completely endorse the comments that you just made, seriously, both in terms of how we feel about what happened and the commitment to make any and all corrections that are necessary to assure that this doesn't happen again. But I do have a statement that I just shortly ago shared with the Mayor and Council, and that I would like to read publicly at this time. I have been reviewing to date the facts and circumstances related to how the investigations of allegations made by a former employee of sexual harassment and retaliation in the workplace, how those investigations were conducted by the city in 2022 and early 2023. I am now formally recommending to the council that you authorize an audit to be commissioned as soon as possible with an independent outside legal firm. The objective would be to review how the investigations were conducted, whether there was evidence of retaliation against any employee, and how our city's internal processes, disciplinary policies, training, and practices can be further improved for the future. The city has been reviewing and updating its employee policies and training practices over the past year with the assistance of external subject matter experts, and this audit will enhance those ongoing efforts. Police Chief Duvall is in full support of my recommendation. I propose that this audit would be managed by the City Attorney's Office and that the results be provided to the City Council with a report ultimately provided by the Council to our residents. We need to operate with best personnel practices, transparency, and an approach that will fully protect our employees and the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone like to move for the council to authorize the city manager to move forward with the independent audit?
So moved.
Councilmember Hanzak moved, Councilmember Schlegel seconded. All those in favor of providing the authorization to the city manager to move forward with the independent audit, please say aye. Do you have any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, you are authorized to move forward with the audit.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you very much, everyone, for providing us with the time necessary to take care of that, that formality. And again, there will be additional information and communications forthcoming. Changes to the agenda. I would like to apologize to my colleagues regarding the resolution on the city priorities because I did not get the markup to you all in time. I am going to ask that we table that discussion for tonight. You will have in your inbox, it's done. Probably haven't looked at it because I did it on the way here. The markups. I just asked for everyone to take a look. Surprisingly, comments were received on almost the exact item, the same items by multiple people. So, but everyone tweaked it slightly differently. So it will warrant us taking a vote. But you will see that when you see the full markup. In terms of agenda items this evening, we will have 2 items for the record. The first is a proclamation of Bike Month, Ride a Bike Day, Bike Enroll to School Day, Bike to Work Week, and Bike to Work Day 2025. We will also have a report out on the April 23rd closed session. We have a presentation tonight, a consultant presentation, an introduction on the performance measurement design project. And then we have 2 voting items this evening. The first is the first reading ordinance authorizing execution of a grant agreement with the Maryland State Arts Council and expenditure of grants funds for the restoration of the Azalea structure. The second is the first reading ordinance authorizing execution of a grant agreement with the Office of Statewide Broadband, Maryland Computer Lab program, and expenditure of grant funds for the computer lab. We will have 2 work sessions. The first is the procurement of the HVAC control system. Obviously, we need something like that. And the contract for the Ward 6 traffic study. And so in terms of upcoming agendas, on Wednesday, May the 7th, the council will meet at its regular time of 7:30. We will have a presentation on our quarterly financial report for FY25 third quarter. We will also have a series of voting sessions. The first is the second reading ordinance authorizing execution of a grant agreement with the Maryland State Arts Council and expenditure of grant funds for the restoration of the Azalea structure. Second reading ordinance authorizing execution of the grant agreement with the Office of Statewide Broadband, Maryland Computer Lab program and expenditure of grant funds for the Library Computer Lab. Resolution authorizing submission of the Kim Lampier Bikeways Network Program Grant application. Resolution identifying FY26 traffic calming sidewalk projects. First reading ordinance adopting the FY26 tax rates. First reading ordinance adopting the FY26 stormwater management budget. First reading ordinance adopting the FY26 budget. There's a consent agenda, single reading ordinance awarding a contract for an HVAC control system. A single reading ordinance awarding a contract for a traffic study for the New Hampshire Gardens community in Ward 6. And a work session on the review of draft resolution establishing the council compensation committee. As a reminder, Sunday, May the 11th is Mother's Day. Don't forget. The next item is Wednesday, May the 14th. The city council will have its regular meeting at 7:30. We have a voting session, second reading ordinance adopting the FY26 tax rates. The second reading ordinance adopting the FY26 stormwater management budget. Second reading ordinance adopting the FY26 budget. And tentatively, we are slated for approval of contract extension with the Human Circuit for City TV and Atrium AV maintenance and improvements. We will have work sessions. The first is a police department annual report, and the second is an update on the public safety task force recommendations. On Wednesday, May the 21st, this council will meet at its regular time of 7:30. We will have a presentation. It's the final presentation on the performance measurement design project. A second presentation on the, I'm sorry, I should re-say that. A separate presentation on rent stabilization by Dr. Christina Stacy of the Urban Institute. And then we will have two work sessions. The first is a review of Resolution 2017-45, identifying goals and priorities for the police. And the second is an ordinance amending the Title VI housing regarding the issuance of rental licenses. And then Monday, May the 26th is Memorial Day. Okay, so with that, I am going to
Madam
move.
Mayor, when you read the agenda for next week, will the council priorities
Yes.
be on the agenda next week?
It will.
Thank you.
And I just want to make sure the city clerk makes that edit. Thank you so much. Okay, and the proclamation, for the record, in honor of Bike Month, Ride a Bike, Bike and Roll to School Day, Bike to Work Week, and Bike to Work Day 2025. Whereas throughout the month of May, Tacoma Park will celebrate biking and the freedom, the joy, and the well-being it brings to each biker, as well as the power that more people riding bikes has in making life better for everyone. And whereas May the 4th, 2025 is National Ride a Bike Day, May 7th, 2025 is Bike, Roll, and Walk to School Day, May 12th through the 18th, 2025 is Bike to Work Week, and May 15th, 2025 is Bike to Work Day. And whereas throughout the month of May, the residents of Tacoma Park and its visitors will experience the joys of bicycling through commuting events, educational programs, bike rodeos, and or by simply getting out and going somewhere by bike. And whereas transportation is the leading source of total emissions in Tacoma Park, and biking is an easy way for people to reduce their carbon footprint and advance the city's climate action. And whereas the city is committed and working to make riding a bike a comfortable, convenient, connected, and enjoyable experience for all residents and visitors, the city maintains sign on-street bike routes, bicycle parking, and public bike repair stations across the city. And whereas Commuter Connections, Washington Area Bicycle Association, schools, parks, and recreation departments, police departments, public health institutions, and businesses will be joining the League of American Bicyclists in promoting bicycling during the month of May 2025. And whereas these groups are also promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education during Bike Month and year-round in an effort to reduce collisions, injuries, and fatalities and improve health and safety for everyone on the road. And now, therefore, I, Talisha Searcy, Mayor of the City of Tacoma Park, Maryland, on behalf of the council, staff, and residents, hereby proclaim May 2025 as Bike Month in the City of Tacoma Park, and I urge our residents to join me in this special observance. Okay. And the next item is a report out on the April 23rd closed session. On April the 23rd, 2025, the City Council convened on Zoom at 6:30 p.m. to vote to convene in closed session to meet with staff and the city's attorneys to receive briefing on a personnel matter and to consult with counsel to receive legal advice regarding the litigation captured as Cooper v. City of Tacoma Park and the related settlement. The meeting was closed pursuant to Annotated Code of Maryland General Provision Article 3-305B1, which permits a meeting to be closed to discuss personnel matters, and 3-305B7, which enables the closing of a meeting to receive legal advice. After the closed session, the council reconvened for its regular meeting, also on Zoom. Present for the closed session vote, Mayor Searcy, council members Landman, Dabala, Schlegel, Gilbert, Honzak, Westlake, and City Clerk Carpenter. Councilmember Hanzak moved to convene the closed session. Councilmember Landman seconded the motion. The motion carried unanimously. The council reconvened on Zoom for the closed meeting. Present for the closed session, Mayor Cersey, council members Landman, DeBala, Slagle, Gilbert, Hanzak, Westlake, City Clerk Carpenter, City Manager DeSpirito, Deputy City Manager Eubanks, Acting Human Resources Director Bolduc, Deputy City Manager Habit, Police Chief Duvall, City Attorney Skip Carnbrooks, Labor Attorney Garrett Wesniak. Mayor Cersey noted the reason for the meeting to convene legal advice and answer any questions that the council may have about the investigation, steps taken, and the overall personnel matter. Topics discussed in the closed session: overview of legally relevant events that resulted in the litigation, Cooper v. City of Tacoma Park and the decision to settle the litigation by the city's insurer, legal considerations related to information that may be made public and information that may not be made public, notification of settlement provided to the city council and related legal considerations, status of involved city personnel, future legal and personnel related considerations for the topics discussed. And that concludes the report out on the April 23rd closed session. Yes, I just want to confirm with the city clerk that will be noted as part of the minutes, correct?
Correct.
Available
And it is
online.
posted now online.
Thank you very much. Okay, and so with that, we're going to move to public comments. Do we have any public comments this evening? Any public comments on voting items? I'm sorry, I did that all wrong. I forgot we have voting items. Do you have any public comments on voting items? I don't think so. Okay. We can move on to general public comments. Come on down.
It's good to see you. Tom Gagliardo. I live in the city of Tacoma Park. The ward is irrelevant because all of you on the dais represent me and everybody else in our community. I'm glad you're moving in the right direction, but actions speak louder than words. We remain vigilant. We hope that you're going to surprise us and really tell us what happened. I'm going to emphasize that simply telling us in conclusory form that XYZ happened is not full disclosure. We want to see documents. The city has before it a detailed document request for me, and I believe that my request is one of several. I still look forward to having a response to that. You told us who was at the meeting, and I noticed litigation attorneys weren't there. Aren't they the key people? Aren't they the people you want to hear from as to why they settled the suit? Because if I heard you correctly, the insurer and its attorneys decided to settle the suit. How much did the city have to pay, if anything? Was there a deductible? We don't know yet. We'd like to know. Let me point out that information is not advice. The non-litigation attorneys could only give you information. They could give you advice on what's disclosable and what's not. But to tell you this is what happened in the course of litigation, and this is why something was done, specifically a settlement for $1 million, is information, not advice. Start thinking about what the Public Information Act and the Open Meeting Act say their purpose is. It's to maximize disclosure to the public. Stop the circle your wagon mentality. I want to read to you.
I'm sorry. We don't have a clock. Go right ahead.
I'll wrap this up very quickly in any event. Let me just read a portion of the law to you. It's from the Public Information Act, the Maryland Public Information Act, and it's pretty explicit. Of course, never rely on electronic devices if you're over 50 years old, which I'm much older than, because then you can't find it when you want to read it. I apologize to everyone. Okay, here we go. This is from the Maryland Code, the General Provisions article, Title 4, 4.311, Personnel Records. A, Subject to subsection B of this section, a custodian shall deny inspection of a personnel record of an individual. And then it says the custodian, in certain circumstances, can reveal it. That's not material to what we're talking about tonight. Subsection C, except as provided in paragraph 2, the following records are not personnel records for the purposes of this section. 1, a record relating to an administrative or criminal investigation of misconduct by a police officer, including an internal affairs investigatory record. The exception is what they call a technical infraction. I await a response to my request, which I make not just for myself, but for the community at large. And I would like to see the settlement agreement. I would like to see the agreement that was entered into the Circuit Court of Montgomery County that stipulated some things, we don't know what things, would be kept confidential. My guess is that it was done at the request of the city, and it was said that the city would provide answers to discovery, but only if it's not redisclosed to anybody else. You can't excuse yourself from the requirements of the Public Information Act by such an agreement. I'm waiting.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other general public comments?
Hi there, I'm Diane Bartz. I am,
I'm sorry, can we get the clock? Thank you. Correct.
yes, go ahead. I don't see a clock, but,
Okay,
oh, there it is.
it's up now. Can we restart the clock? And let's just make sure that your mic is working.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
So first of all, I want to start with 2 questions. The audit that you mentioned, do you have an end date for when we can look at our calendar and say, hey, you know, this was going to happen? And secondly, I noticed that Thomas Black was demoted. I would like to know if his pay was cut in a way that reflects that demotion, or if his pay remained the same. The rest of my remarks, I want to address to Councilmember Gilbert. You were on the force. You, in your remarks last week, you were very sympathetic to the police chief, and you said you were very confident that he would do the right thing. What I want to point out is that it is not good for a police force to have a person allegedly working there who spends his time pestering dispatchers for sex, showing himself and his wife having sex to the dispatcher. This is not good for a police force. Organizations that get rid of people like that include my former news agency, Reuters, who fired the head of America's News because he was texting young reporters demanding sex. He was gone in weeks. I will say that there's a couple organizations that failed to deal with misconduct in its ranks: the Boy Scouts and church dioceses. If you Google pedophilia church diocese, you'll find all sorts of bankruptcies because churches couldn't pay the settlements of the pedophile priests that they didn't deal with. It is good for an organization. An organization is stronger. The police department will be stronger if cops who are guilty of misconduct are not kept on the force out of some misguided sympathy. I mean, I will add that I'm aware that police departments sometimes view themselves as apart from the community. And I really think that that's a mistake. This, police civilian divide is not good for anybody. I mean, a police officer came to our house recently when airbag got stolen, and we're grateful to this gentleman. And that's, I hope my questions are answered when you folks respond. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other general public comments this evening?
Hi, I'm Jenny Myers. I live on Circle Avenue in Ward 2. I'm here to comment about the sexual harassment complaint, and I'm encouraged that you all are treating it in a serious way and moving forward in a way that seems like what I would want. But I'm going to enter my comments in the record, and I know that you will take all of the comments that you get seriously as you move forward in the way that I think is best. The complaint against Thomas Black is hard to read. I know it is just a complaint with no response from the accused, but at this point, it's all we have to go on. And I believe that with a $1 million settlement, it must include enough truth to have been taken seriously. I'll let other residents talk about transparency, thanks, Tom, and truth. My comments focus on the behavior reported in the complaint, because if they are true, and there's a good chance they are, they must be addressed far more robustly than they have been thus far. This wildly inappropriate behavior must not be tolerated. Police officers are supposed to be people we can trust to help us. The Thomas Black described in this complaint is a threat, not a help. In addition to forcing sexual conversation on a colleague and flexing his power and rank by physically lingering in a way that made her feel so unsafe, she asked friends to check in on her. What was Thomas Black doing in the dispatch room when he should have been out on calls? What upsets me even more is the complicit behavior of others in the department. We need to fix a police department culture where it's okay to harass Kakila Cooper and blame her by questioning whether her clothing or behavior invited these unwanted advances. Why didn't someone say, hey, this is not okay. Stop harassing her? Why is Black back on the job? And here's an important question. Am I safe? I'm worried about every woman in this city who might have an emergency, even a sexual assault, and wind up having to rely on a man who victimizes women in this way. What if I call the police department and Thomas Black responds? What if he came into my home to inspect a broken window from a burglary? Would that feel safe? Again, I have only the complaint to go by, which is why we must have more information. You, council members and mayor, must do everything in your power to make this right. Hold people accountable for unacceptable behavior and protect the people of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other general comments this evening?
Elizabeth Wallace. In the next 3 minutes, 3 people in the U.S. will be victims of sexual assault. Will one of them be in Tacoma Park? Will they trust to call 911? Will they trust the officer who responds? State law mandates that police officers report misconduct by other officers. What if the one at your door diminished or laughed at what Black did to Miss Cooper? Will he or she respect your right to report a concern or a crime, or talk you out of making a report, as that's happened to many women and men I've spoken to here? Many residents still support our hosting a police department. With that financial support becomes moral and legal expectations. Kakila Cooper chose to leave, rightfully so. In general, police officers and civilian staff leave law enforcement because of job stress, burnout, low morale, and negative public perception, which we have now. These factors contribute to a crisis in recruitment and retention. Other reasons include poor pay, lack of support from leadership, and difficult work-life balance. Of all types of civilian employees in police departments nationwide, agencies reported that dispatch positions are among those most difficult to fill. This is according to the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which maybe our chiefs are members of. This is all the more reason retention of good, dedicated employees like Ms. Cooper should have received paramount protection by her superiors. I, for one, do not want the current negative public perception to be a cause of any more good employees, especially the ones who supported Ms. Cooper, to depart. They need to be lauded, applauded, and encouraged to serve as mentors for new recruits so they cultivate a culture of compassion for coworkers as well as the city residents. I'm not going to mention their names. They may not want me to, and I don't want to leave out any. There may be more than those listed in the complaint. But I just want you to know, as Tacoma Park residents, we appreciate you. I, for one, want to hold the chief and his staff to be accountable to create a supportive and healthy organizational culture that prioritizes employee well-being. The TPPD hierarchy has a long way to go to repair the damage, foster stronger community relationships, and modernize recruitment processes that can help rebuild trust, attract a broader pool of qualified candidates who want to work in a department that protects their own, not by hiding wrongdoing, but by shining a light, rewarding the good. Prove to us you're up to the task. It's a big one.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other general public comments this evening?
Hi, Catherine Tunis. Thank you for being there, and thank you for listening to us. And I wanted to say that I really do appreciate your taking the sexual harassment issue very seriously. I think I stated my own thoughts about that pretty clearly last week. There was a lot of very illegal behavior going on, and I think we're all very concerned about that. One of the things that I wanted to check on was what was the city attorney's involvement in the case and in the settlement. And it seems to me that usually when these kinds of cases go forward, the attorney representing the agency will be clearly involved, both in terms of determining what the facts are, the litigation risk, and terms of a settlement. And so if the city attorney was involved in that, that city attorney should not be leading an audit that investigates what happened. That should not happen. I have a question. Isn't it a crime to threaten to kill someone? Even if that person is related to you? It used to be legal to it used to be legal to beat your wife, but not your dog. I think we've moved a little bit beyond that, but Officer Black repeatedly threatened to kill his wife. That should be considered a crime and a sign that this is a dangerous person. I am very concerned about that and about her. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the movement in the city. This has changed just a little bit. I know we've talked a lot about the need for transparency in this case, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that I've been noticing on the city website and in other city communications. Things have gotten watered down a lot. You used to be able to go to the staff directory and see all the employees in a department. And so you could go, oh, I remember his name was this or that, the other thing. You can't do that now. You have to know the person's name before you can find their contact information. I think we should go back to providing more substantial information to residents so they know and can get involved in city business when they need to. The other thing I wanted to just mention and touch on is that there are a lot of citizens in the city that can be a little bit of a pain to hear, but there are a lot of people who are professionals with other expertise, and it can be very, very helpful to the city and the understanding of how to do things better if we are listened to. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other general public comments this evening?
Good evening, Sue Miller, Ward 3. I wasn't going to speak, but I just want to report that the sign-on letter of concern about this case is up to 180 names and it's growing. Thank you for the apology. That is important. However, I want to underscore what Catherine just said, that this audit, what we wanted to be an investigation, cannot be under the city attorney. The city attorney is implicated, if only because I know some of you knew nothing about this case until it hit the press. Why? Why were you not given time to understand what was going on before it hit the press? So this has to be thoroughly independent. This is a crisis for our city. And I know y'all have a lot on your plates, but the council has to be holding the reins here. because this is a staff issue, and that includes the city attorney, who was very involved with the entire thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, do we have any virtual? Oh, come on.
Good evening, David Reed. I'd like to join the voices that I've heard this evening who've spoken about the importance of carrying out an impartial, thorough, and transparent investigation of the events surrounding the sexual assessment of Ms. Cooper. As the details of the events have been clear a week and a half ago, I began wondering what would be the best way to carry out a sexual harassment investigation that would be fair, fully address lodged grievances, and also promote necessary change. So I started examining somewhere between 25 and 30 investigatory approaches that range from the EEOC and local governments to law firms and civil society organizations. I'll leave a copy with you tonight of what I think to be one of the best comprehensive, transparent, and even-handed proposals for conducting a sexual harassment investigation. It contains 13 basic categories with any number of subpoints underneath it. But given the time constraints, I would like to just enumerate 7 points that I see are particularly relevant to the situation before us. And they begin: move quickly to mitigate harm and to demonstrate commitment. Second, deploy no fewer than 2 investigators to ensure fairness and depth of inquiry. Make public the investigation plan to ensure a fair, efficient, and effective process with an established timeline. Define the scope of the investigation, the time period covered, and the identity of all persons involved, including lawyers and senior management. 5, prepare for the collection of additional evidence to capture new avenues of discovery. Establish oversight measures to ensure non-retaliation. And finally, take needed corrective actions quickly and with transparency to address all forms of misconduct. These points, which are really among quite a number of others, could be seen as markers or points of reference to help guide the city as it figures out how to regain the trust of residents in both the police department and the city government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other general public comments?
Colleen Cordes, Ward 1. First, I just want to say to the police officers in Tacoma Park how much I appreciate and respect their risking their lives for public safety, their choice of this kind of work, and I really do appreciate their work, and I'm sure many of us would join in that appreciation. My concern and what I would ask you about in specific for this audit is that the audit include as a major feature looking into the workplace culture in the police department and how that was involved in this. And I just want to read one thing from the civil complaint that was attributed to Brendan Smith, who's Ms. Cooper's union representative. He apparently emailed in May 2023 to the police chief, the deputy police chief, the then acting city manager, then head of human resources, and the head of dispatchers. He apparently said something like, there also are larger concerns about the workplace culture in the police department where female civilian employees, and that's plural, and female civilian employees don't feel safe and they don't feel heard. So I think that, in addition to the horrendous allegations here about sexual harassment, it's super, super, super disturbing how the rest of the police department responded, and also why the administration of the city itself wasn't more involved here. I don't know, this is what I'm hoping the audit will help clarify. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that I understand that this is a former sergeant, but it's also all of our understanding that he's been demoted to a private and that he's still on the workforce, the person that these allegations are about. So if that's incorrect, if the officer is not still employed by the city of Tacoma Park, please correct that, city manager. That'd be great if you could correct that, if he's no longer employed. And I think that there is a question that the council should ask, which is the reason he's being kept on staff so that he can earn his pension? I think that if you're 55 and you've worked for 5 years, you can earn proportionately your pension. Or if you've been here 25 years. I believe that this particular officer has not been here quite, well, it'll be 20 years, but that's not 25. So perhaps he's soon to turn 55. You might want to find that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do I have any other general public comments? Okay, do we have any virtual public comments? Okay, we're going to move on to council comments. Do we have any council comments this evening? Okay. All right. We have to do hands. Councilmember Landman.
First, I want to say thank you to everyone who spoke this evening. We've heard you loud and clear. This process is not over, and we have our work cut out for us, and I very much appreciate how carefully many of you have looked at these underlying documents and been extremely thoughtful in your comments. I wanted to, and I want to thank the mayor and the city manager for their comments as well as a really excellent starting point for where we need to go. I wanted to flag for those watching at home, the millions, and those in the room, the importance of the meeting tomorrow evening at the Piney Branch Elementary School to discuss the future of Piney Branch Elementary and the Piney Branch Pool. This is a very important part of our community, and I know many of the people in this room are aware of this, but I was concerned that the parents of Tacoma Park Elementary School had not been fully notified, and of course those are the parents whose children will be in Piney Branch any minute. So I want to encourage everyone to let their neighbors know. Tomorrow night is the first of a series of meetings, but it's only 1 hour tomorrow night and 1 hour a couple of future weeks. And I have on hand a memo dating from the 70s about the history of the pool and its original creation, which I'd be happy to share with people here. I think it's an important piece of the history and may be helpful and relevant tomorrow night. And finally, let me make a pitch for the Fix-It Clinic this Sunday from 12:30 to 2:30 at the temporary library over on New Hampshire Avenue. Bring your broken stuff and your stuff with holes and missing buttons, and have your neighbors help you fix it for free. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Landman. Do we have any other council comments this evening? Councilmember Honzak?
Thank you. I'm not going to reiterate what my colleague just stated, but I definitely want to thank everyone who has shown up. Your voice matters tremendously to me. I appreciate the research that people have put in. I appreciate the code that people offer to us. It's all more things for us to think about, and I really, really, really appreciate you sharing with us, and I genuinely hope that we will restore everyone's trust. I'm going to just talk about a few other things. One is a better bus session that I went to today. I know also that our transit planner was present, but because time is of the essence for this, I just wanted to share a few things that I learned today. So WMATA is completely overhauling our bus networks. They've been working on this for several years, but I'm sure that there are people who aren't that aware of what's going on. And June 29th is the launch date for the new network. The most interesting thing I learned is that routes, stops, and hours of operation and frequency will be changing. And you can already now look at trip planners on WMATA, and you can put in your current trip that you want to take as of like today, and it'll show you current routes. But then if you go after June 29th and put in a hypothetical like June 30th or after, then it will already show you the new routes. So I think that's, and they said that's probably the single best way for you to sort of figure out how it's going to affect you personally. And then they'll be having all kinds of other, pamphlets and things available. So I hope we can all help to get that word out because there's so many people that depend on that. And the other thing I just wanted to share was about our vote on the azalea sculpture tonight. I did send a note out to my residents. The azalea sculpture is in Ward 5 currently. I will be abstaining from the vote tonight. I support that we have gotten grant funding to repaint it, and I think it's important that the sculpture stays here and that it gets repainted in a time of shortage of funding. And it is my understanding that in order to get the funding to get it repainted, we needed to make a bolder ask and to be able to move it. I am very eager to see us, and I'm very happy that the city senior leadership as well as other stakeholders are supportive of us putting other aesthetic work, other safety work, other beautification at that corner. And I hope that I will enjoy the support of my fellow council members as we go ahead and take that vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Honzak. I just want to pause council comments for 1 second. I believe we have one virtual comment. City Clerk, would you?
Would you like to take that now?
Yes, let's take that now before we finalize the council comments.
You may want to move to one more comment and I'll get him in.
Okay, no worries. Do we have any other council comments? Councilmember DeBala.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming out and talking about this situation, and thank you to the city manager and the mayor for putting forward the next steps. I'm not going to repeat what everybody else said. It's so important that our staff feel safe, and it's so important that we all trust the police. On another note, thank you to the staff and the volunteers for Earth Day. That was a great day. I really enjoyed it. And just to let the rest of the council know, next on Friday and Saturday morning is the MML board meeting. So I'll be going out to that for part of Friday and Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember DeBala. Do we have any other council comments this evening? Councilmember Honzak.
I'm sorry, I
Duo.
forgot something fun. Cinco de Mayo celebration is being held on Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May, this Monday night. I don't actually have the time in front of me, but Monday evening there'll be mariachi bands and food, and I hope to see people out at the northern corner.
Recording in progress.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments? Where go? Councilmember Westlake.
I'm just going to add one other fun event that is this Saturday from 11 to 2. There'll be a block party at the Crossroads. So the big multicolored sign that's Tacoma Langley Crossroads in the same shopping center as the Red Apple Market. There will be a block party there. There's going to be a lot of music, free face painting, prizes, etc. So come on by. That should be a lot of fun.
Thank you, Councilmember Westlake. Councilmember Schlegel.
Thank you, Mayor Searcy. Thank you to everyone who came tonight to speak and all the people who have been writing. And while I know it's not necessary to repeat comments, I bolded just a few phrases just so we can really hear them amplified, if that's helpful. Mr. Gagliardo spoke about the need for us to really attend to the PIA requirements. Ms. Bartz, if I have the name correct, that it is good for an organization if people guilty of misconduct are not kept on out of some misguided sympathy. And as someone who grew up in the Catholic Church, I can relate very much to that need for everyone in an organization to be vigilant. Jenny Myers, we as council, she said that we as council must do everything in our power to make this right. Elizabeth Wallace, that the police chief should be held accountable for creating a positive organizational culture. Catherine Tunis, a very important point about if the city attorney was involved in this, he should not be leading an audit. And I just wanted to clarify, my impression is that the city attorney would be arranging an audit, but not leading it. And if you could confirm that, Manager DeSpirito.
Yes.
Okay. Sue Miller's point that this must be a thoroughly independent investigation, which was underscored by Mr. Reed, thorough, impartial investigation. And I appreciated Ms. Cordes' comment about the importance of looking into workplace culture. Thanks for your indulgence. I just feel like, just to hear it all a little bit more is really important. I just wanted to comment that the heat in the room may not be visible if you're watching. So when we all laughed about the HVAC system, that wasn't because of any heat we're feeling right now, other than physical heat. You see, I've taken my jacket off, and these two gentlemen here are observing the dress code, and I feel bad for them. Couple of fun projects in Ward 3. Great, huge thanks to Adriana Elefante and Vincent Verveege, who went for a walk with me, and Randy Gibson joined us, and we're taking stock of some of the amazing forests and creeks that we have in the southern side of Tacoma Park, and hoping to come up with some ways to make those places attractive to people, maybe even a whole staycation you could plan around the forests of Tacoma Park. And we can dream. And then the last thing is Piney Branch, just to reiterate what Councilmember Landman said, it's really important for folks to come out and be heard about possible and have their voices heard about possible options for the renovation there, as well as the fate of the pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schlegel. We have that virtual commenter now.
We
All
do have him now.
Excellent.
Apologies again.
No worries, better late than never. Good evening. I'm here as a resident of Ward 2 to address the city's $1 million settlement of the Kekila Cooper case, a case that exposed systemic failure inside the Tacoma Park Police Department. This was not about one bad officer. This was about an entire culture. Number one, we have a supervisor that harassed the civilian dispatcher for months. Number two, leadership protected him. And number three, victims were blamed, isolated, interrogated, ultimately driven out. The city demoted Sergeant Black, but allowed him to return to duty, supervise others perhaps, and keep his pension. The department, for its part, labeled his harassment consensual, despite Black's own admissions. So let's be very clear, $1 million is cheap. It's a bargain compared to the human cost Ms. Cooper paid, the trust your leadership squandered, and the lawsuits this government may still face if you don't fix what this case exposed. And let's be even clearer. Your lawyers settled this case early, before discovery really got underway, before real depositions, before any real exchange of documents could be exchanged. Because if this case went to a jury, I'm sure your lawyers told you pretty clearly what kind of exposure we were facing, and it's way more than $1 million. And here's the truth you're going to have trouble ignoring. The Tacoma Park Police Department already has a written policy, General Order 202, Rule 20. It prohibits sexual harassment, defines it clearly, it promises protection against hostile work environments. But more importantly, let's not forget Title VII and related statutes. The policy was there. The rules are pretty damn clear. The failure was not in the words on paper. The failure was in the lack of enforcement, the lack of training, the lack of customs. The failure at the end was in the lack of leadership. None of you were born yesterday, but a settlement is not accountability. It's not reform either. It's only the cost of doing business unless the council demands change. So some questions for you to hopefully ponder. At the time of Ms. Cooper's employment, was harassment prevention training mandatory for all employees? In the last 10 years, how were harassment claims handled by the police department, and what were their dispositions? Was when Cooper reported sexual harassment, was there any independent reporting process outside the police chain of command? And beyond demoting Officer Black, were any supervisors disciplined for mishandling her complaints or retaliating against her? Has the city created an independent investigative process? We had the right policies. We had the right rules and laws. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in that connection. But policies on paper don't protect people. Leadership does. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great. We're going to go back to council comments. Do we have any other council comments this evening? Okay. So I want to reiterate my appreciation of all of the commenters this evening.
I want you to rest assured that members of council are asking a lot of questions, and we are committed to making sure that we are in a position where we're providing a safe work environment for our staff first and foremost, but also that we rebuild the trust in our community with our police department. Our police chief has been very, very open to working towards improvement, and so and making sure that the department improves. And so I want people to understand that this is a commitment on all fronts to ensuring that we are addressing any systemic issues that exist or may exist. In terms of additional comments, there's a lot of stuff that's happening. So for, I will be at Piney Branch tomorrow. I want to echo my colleagues in asking people to please come out for the Piney Branch feasibility study. Saturday is going to be very, very, very full. The Tacoma Park Children's Business Fair is tomorrow in Old Town. That is from, I believe, 10 to 2. There's the Blooms and Beats block party. I'll be there. I'm going to just make the circuit. I will be at Blooms and Beats. Tacoma Foundation, I believe, has their Beer Fest fundraiser that is on Saturday. There's also the Tacoma Park Band performance that will be here on Saturday at 3. And Mahjong will be played at the Tacoma Park Presbyterian Church as a fundraiser as well at 6:30. So there's it's resistance, activism. So there is a lot of things that are happening on Saturday. And on Sunday, I have the pleasure of addressing the graduating students of Washington Adventist University at their commencement. So I look forward to joining the graduates on Sunday of Washington Adventist University. And with that, I'm checking because there's a lot of things going on. Oh, I also just want to echo Councilmember DeBala in my appreciation of the staff and all of the work they did for Earth Day. We had to change the day last minute, but it was a great decision, and it was a beautiful day, and it was a wonderful opportunity to learn about new ways that I personally can be more sustainable, and to also share with the community the wonderful work that we're doing in the city. And with that, I will turn things over to our city manager, Mr. DeSpirito.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, and to our guests. From the Housing and Community Development Department, come join us May 2nd, Friday, at the Community Center Auditorium here as the Washington Conservatory of Music and Accord Chamber Players present Echoes of Longing, a free concert including the playful dulcet tones of Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings and mournful longings of Pietro Mascagni's opera Cavalleria. They had to give me this. Rusticana, and other classical music and opera highlights. Concert will begin at 7:30 p.m. and admission is free. If you're worried that your bicycle needs a tune-up for Bike Month, the HCD department is offering a free bike repair pop-up at the Tacoma Park Farmers Market and Crossroads Farmers Market during the month of May. Swing by and get your bicycle in top shape ahead of Bike to Work Day and Bike to School Day. From the police department, the Tacoma Park Police and Innova Blood Donor Services are hosting a community blood drive on Saturday, May 24th from 11:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. in the Azalea Room, the second floor here at 7500 Maple Avenue. Donating takes just a little time but can save lives. Register via the email link provided by the police department or contact Catherine Tunis at Tacoma Park Blood Drive at gmail.com for more information and a link to register. Good news, the issue with signing up for the security camera rebate program has been resolved. It is now live and accepting applications from residents and businesses in Tacoma Park. The program offers up to $250 back on the purchase of a security camera. That includes installation, accessories, and installation, accessories, and subscriptions are not covered, but it would go towards the purchase of the camera itself. This initiative supports community safety by helping more people invest in security. To apply or learn more, please visit montgomerycountymd.gov and search camera rebate. Following Saturday's prescription drug take-back event, Tacoma Park Police delivered a total of 381 pounds of medication to the DEA drop-off site on Monday. Of that, Tacoma Park Police collected 288 pounds, and our partners at Montgomery College contributed 93 pounds. Thank you to Montgomery College for their valuable partnership. This nationwide prescription drug take-back campaign is important as it allows the public to prevent pill abuse and theft by ridding their homes of potentially dangerous, expired, unused, and unwanted prescription drugs. As a reminder, residents looking to dispose of excess and expired prescription and over-the-counter medications can visit the safe and secure permanent drop-off location at the City of Tacoma Park Police Department here at 7500 Maple Avenue. It's in the first floor lobby. From the Public Works Department, thank you to all the community members, partners, and local elected officials who attended the city's Earth Month event this past Sunday. This was a well-attended event with over 700 people coming through. Special thanks to our city departments from Public Works, Housing and Community Development, and Recreation for supporting this event. And special thanks to Mayor Searcy, Councilmember Honzak, Councilmember Dabala, Delegate Charkoudian, and U.S. Representative Raskin for speaking at this important event to highlight Tacoma Park's leadership in the climate action movement. The city's Sustainability Office is hosting a Green Business Info Session in person next Tuesday, May 6th, from 9 to 11 a.m. at Historic Tacoma, 7328 Carroll Avenue. This session will provide valuable insights into energy-saving strategies and programs from our partners at Pepco MD, Energy Advisors, and Blue Whale EV, and Solar United Neighbors, and Bethesda Green, USGBC, and Runwise. All of this, they can help reduce your operating costs and improve the efficiency of your building. We highly encourage small and medium-sized local businesses to attend in order to learn how they can maximize their energy savings. Free coffee and pastries will be included. And finally, from Public Works, the city's new grant opportunity, Green Homes and Businesses Grant, will open next week. This grant is aimed at improving environmental sustainability and energy efficiency for homes and businesses across the city. This grant helps reduce utility costs, improve indoor air quality, increase comfort, and support the city's broader climate and sustainability goals. Small businesses and residents, both tenants and single-family homeowners, are eligible to apply for a variety of projects that focus on weatherization and electrification. Small businesses are eligible for up to $30,000 per project, and resident grants range from $5,000 to $15,000, depending on household income. An online information session will also be held on Tuesday, May 13th at 6 o'clock p.m. Please see the grant page of the city website if you desire more information. And finally, from the city manager's office. This week's shout out is from our Housing and Community Development Department. A special shout out to Ramon Sola, our HCD coordinator. Ramon is the first person most residents speak to over the phone or in person when they visit our office. We are grateful for his compassion and thoughtfulness in helping our residents. Ramon's terrific. And a second one from a second shout out for all of our departments, from all of our departments to their administrative professionals. Administrative Professionals Week is celebrated annually during the last full week of April. The week is dedicated to honoring and celebrating the outstanding contributions of administrative professionals, including receptionists, secretaries, administrative and executive assistants, personal assistants, customer support staff, and others who provide essential administrative support. Their dedication, organization, and behind-the-scenes effort to keep our workplaces running smoothly and successfully is greatly appreciated. So we say thank you, and we're very fortunate to have you. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move into our presentation for this evening. Consultant presentation, Introduction to Performance Measurement Design Project.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. The City of Tacoma Park is currently engaged in an initiative to expand and enhance its performance measurement framework. The initiative aims to strengthen data-informed decision-making, support fiscal sustainability, improve government transparency, and align departmental performance with strategic priorities such as equity, community engagement, and environmental sustainability. To conduct this investigation into our performance measurement program, the city contracted Metropolitan Strategies and Solutions to lead the effort. We issued a RFP in 2024 and hired MSS thereafter. MSS is a data analytics and strategic consulting firm with experience supporting performance management efforts in local governments across the country. So today we're very happy to have MSS to join us today to walk us through some of the work that they have conducted thus far, but mostly to introduce council to the process and talk about the outcome, as well as discuss broadly the way in which council might envision utilizing the program to conduct your council business, evaluating the budget, evaluating programs and initiatives. So without further ado, I will introduce Mr. LaJuan Strickland, who is the CEO and founder of MSS, to introduce the rest of his team and begin our presentation. Thank you, LaJuan.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, City Council, City Management Team, and the residents of the City of Tacoma Park, thank you for having us here this evening. My name is LaJuan Strickland, and the CEO and founder of Metropolitan Strategies and Solutions. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C., but we have offices in St. Louis, Missouri, as well as in New York City. And as Mr. Eubanks pointed out, that we've done work across this country. We're tiny but mighty, and like I said, we're veteran-owned, proud Army veteran, and my partner Michael Taylor, that you guys will get a chance to meet at the final presentation later on this month. I want to introduce you to very important people that are part of the project team. One of our deputy directors, Sydney Pedigo Pfeiffer, and also Rashawn Parks. So they will walk you through the rest of the presentation today. I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew who I am, and if you see me around, say hello. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for making time today for this. Before we get started with the content, I wanted to say that we commend the City of Tacoma Park for going through this process in this way. As LaJuan mentioned, we work with several state and local government agencies, and on projects such as this, it is really easy to skip right into measuring and to just collecting data and looking at the results. But the thoughtfulness and the effort that's gone into really strategizing and discussing the measures and talking with departments has been excellent. So commend you all for that approach here. Today we're going to talk a bit about the purpose as well as the context behind this project. We're going to show you the overall framework visual and structure that we're using for the final results. We're going to talk about the timeline as well as some challenges and resource constraints you might want to think about in the future of the actual implementation phase here. As LaJuan mentioned, we are coming back again in May with the final report. So you are not going to see finalized metrics at this time, and that is as intended. There will be plenty of time for feedback and comment on those at a later date. Okay, so first of all, the purpose of this enhanced performance measurement framework. First of all, if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. We've been starting this project looking at your strategic priorities and really trying to focus on how to measure and understand where you currently are and where you can be in the future. So without coming into the data and trying to measure those objectives, you won't be able to track your progress and your challenges as they arise. Secondly, data isn't just to look pretty on a slide or to show up a big number, it's to tell a story and to prompt action. So here we're hoping that the data that results from these projects will create faster decisions, hopefully highlight more things for you all to consider in terms of operations and other decisions. And then lastly, especially as we've heard today, accountability and public trust is a very important topic. Presenting data publicly can feel very vulnerable and challenging. When we work with clients, there's a lot of nuances and context to take into account, but it's something that ultimately helps engage the public, create more trust, and ultimately create that kind of accountability and relationship that benefits us all. Okay, I'm gonna hand it to Rashawn to take us through the history, context, and current project status, and then we'll get back and show you all that framework.
Excuse me. Good evening. To better understand where we're headed, we got to talk about where we are today and how we got here, right? So, in 2022, the city teamed up with a firm that did a very thorough assessment of the organization's structure, its operations, and its staffing levels, and came to the conclusion that the city of Tacoma Park needed a stronger or more robust approach to performance management. So in 2023, you guys set your goals for your performance management system, and then you set out to select a team to partner with you on the design phase of this project. So here we are, and we're approaching near the end of this design phase, but let's talk about how we started it. We started that design phase with a top-down performance management framework based on your strategic priorities and your objectives, right? And we paired that with industry best practices research that would inform our approach to a department listening tour, where we got to take the department's perspective on the framework, and they could tell you where their department shared the vision. So here we are at we're about to be at the implementation phase, and we provided recommendations to provide you with all the necessary information for you to acquire the proper technology, implement the system and its metrics, and execute our recommendations, and also train your staff to get through the transition. All right, so let's talk a little bit more, or take a little bit more of a scope into what we've been doing over the past year. So here we have we kicked it off strong in January. We held a senior leadership team meeting where we gathered all of your departments so that they could share in the vision. So the team meeting was a visioning session, and in that visioning session, we put together that performance management framework where they were able to recommend performance metrics based on your strategic priorities. And after they recommended the priorities, we were able to come up with personas. So these personas were basically end users who would use the performance metrics, and they were able to tailor those performance metrics to end user consumption. So after we determined those metrics, we've gone on this department listening tour after we've done the best practices research, and we've been on that department listening tour for a month or so now. And the conversations have been very productive, and they've been able to inform us basically what each department's current status is, or current approach to data management is. And now that we've got that information, it's going to culminate in a final report that basically gives you a full list of performance metrics, ways to collect, manage, analyze, and report the data. And we'll be briefing you on those performance metrics and all this information in that final report after our senior leadership team meeting that's upcoming. Sorry.
All right. Okay, so as promised, here is a visual of our framework approach to structuring the measures. As Rashawn mentioned, we really start with the strategic priorities set forth by council. These are currently from the fiscal year 24 to 25 proposed budget, but we understand that there is a document that is still being finalized, and we will update to align with those in the future. So you can see at that top level, the 5 different strategic priorities, and again, we will update these in the future. that second level of the objectives, if you're noticing some are missing, we are tracking them. Even as consultants, we can't fit everything onto one slide, so we did have to pull out a sample here. But these are the objectives that are coming from the priorities, and then we are deciding and discovering KPIs that will help track those objectives. So that is the
I'm
top.
sorry, could you define KPI? I'm sorry, I
Yes,
don't know.
Of course. And that's a key performance indicator. So we will give you an example too in a moment, but that's basically what is being measured. And it gets a bit more granular than just, you know, how fiscally responsible are we? It says, what's the exact percent and the number that tells us how fiscally responsible we are. Okay. So from the KPIs, those are being discussed with departments. And then this is where a really helpful bottom-up portion comes from. We're talking to them to see, you know, what are their operations? What data do they have that could help answer and describe these objectives? We're learning about the nuance of their data systems, their cadence and reporting, their capacity. We're capturing a lot of really helpful information so that we can recommend the best implementation approach for you all. So again, this is a skeleton that helps us structure the performance measures to both match the vision and the strategic priorities, but also the feasibility and the actual operations of the city, with the eventual goal of helping you all track how you're matching that vision for Tacoma Park. So the promised example here, under the fiscally sustainable government, there's an objective around maintaining and improving financial conditions, being economically stable. And an example KPI or example measure would be maintaining a reserve fund. So looking at the percent of change in the reserve fund, per the goal is around 17% each year. And so tracking how that would change over time, comparing it to your goals and your baseline. We will have time for discussion at the end too, so I know this is a lot of questions here. Okay, so now to talk a bit about implementation. We want to not scare you all about challenges, but there will be things that you will likely face in the coming years as you implement this framework. We want to let you all know what we've seen in our experience so you can be prepared to mitigate those when they come. They can maybe happen all in the first 6 months. Some might happen 2 years in or only to one department, but either way, we're going to talk through these briefly. So first of all, scope creep is a big one. It means, you know, getting out of the range of the intended purpose of the project. That's why we keep coming back to that framework with the vision, so that we know maybe there's a cool new measure idea out there in the future, but if it's not aligning to the vision, that could end up being scope creep and pull resources away from the existing work that's needed to happen. So definitely be wary of that in the future years. Consistency and alignment here too really come together. It can be hard to maintain consistency when you have so many measures that you're trying to track across departments, across different system types. We encourage you all to try to keep things as synced up in terms of timeline or tools as possible, so that you don't introduce any unnecessary confusion or just stressors even as you're trying to train people on the system. Believe me, we've been there when you do everything in a one-off way, and it can be really complicated at the end of the day. Thirdly, there's a resource. Is it going to be a challenge in the future? When we talk to departments, almost every department mentions how much they're doing and how much more they wish they could do. So just really acknowledging any resource or capacity constraints, and again, maintaining that dedicated task and responsibility for these metrics to keep performing and providing the data as originally intended. And then infrastructure complexity here, talking about these tools and systems, these are likely going to adapt over the life cycle of this project. You know, maybe a department changes their system of record, or maybe some technology goes away and you have to change and adapt. But just keep in mind that infrastructure can get sometimes too complex and then it can't be used. Or if you don't have the right tools and systems, then it creates a lot of manual processes and rework that has to occur as well. So finding that sweet spot in complexity and simplicity for your systems is going to be kind of a continual challenge to think through. And then alignment, it talked on a bit before, but keeping internal alignment across departments and even across the council and your stakeholders, so you stay aligned on the vision, aligned on the process, and just training in a way that is consistent will be very important. Okay, so again, talking about that implementation phase, you will see this all in our final report as well, but we wanted to go ahead and start bringing this to your attention. we're going to recommend something called a C4 framework. And I'll list out the C's, and they're here on the slide as well. So you're going to be collecting data, you're going to be curating it. That means you're removing crazy values, you're double checking for accuracy, and so on. You're going to be calculating it if it's a year-over-year number or percentage, and then you're going to be consuming it. You're going to be putting it into a report or a visual or some way so that people can actually digest and understand the data and the story you're telling. Each of those steps requires, some sort of tool. Some of them might share a tool or so, but you might need a data collection system, a repository. You will likely need some way to calculate the data, right? A dashboarding or visualization tool. And then you're going to need kind of processes, documentation, training staff, and then of course the actual staff resources and hours. In our report, we're going to propose a range of options there. So you're able to see kind of, again, from complex to really simple, what the types of tools and ranges there are. But I can tell you it can range from Google Sheets and Smart Sheets on the kind of simple repository calculation visualization side to something like a data warehouse like SQL, Cloud Platform, or Looker. All right, okay, so that is a update on the project, what we are currently working on, and then also what we're going to bring to your consideration in the report, so you can start thinking about that now. But we'd like to hear from you all, any questions you might have or any feedback for us as we're in the middle of this.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing some structure to the approach, which I think is, I work in this space when I'm not a mayor, and that is the hardest part, trying to identify the structure. So if folks are okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. So one of the things that I am trying to think through is how, so our council priorities may change every 2 years, right? Now, although the top line priority may not change, the objectives will likely change. And the challenge is that the priorities are a 2-year kind of thing. The objectives change. If you're trying to look at trends over time, there's going to be a data lag, and you're going to need data for an extended period of time in order to show a particular increase. And by the time you've shown that increase, it is quite possible you have a brand new council and they've changed the priority. So has there been any discussion about, although the framework is rooted in the existing council priorities that we have right now, has there been discussions around kind of thinking through measures that are operational and make sense from an operational standpoint that may not be a direct one-to-one to the council priority, but would be a good indicator generally as it relates to an efficiency indicator, a cost effectiveness indicator, like things that are a little bit more not so rooted in the council objectives themselves because they may change, but things that may just be good from a perspective of overall city management that might be a good indicator for any council, whether it's this council or future councils, to be able to have access to, and for the city itself to be able to measure over time.
Sorry, LaJuan Strickland again. In our recommendation, we'll make sure, because the system itself should be agile, and in our recommendations, we will put that. So whatever KPI you decide, if the system's able to be agile enough to gather that information, we'll make sure we put that recommendation in. But one thing that I would caution, and we've talked about this, the team has talked about it, is when you're developing a KPI that is, I want to say that's so nuanced that you have to procure something else or do something else in order to gather that information, we would like to, we would suggest stay away from, or at least know that risk going into it. So, and we understand, we work with a lot of city governments and administrations change all the time. Probably 85 or 90% of the core operational KPIs stay the same no matter what, right? But then that other 10% does matter. It's like someone voted you in office probably for this particular issue. But so having a system that's agile enough to capture most of all things, we will definitely have that in our recommendation. But then also whoever you guys use for KPI development, hopefully that person is guiding you down a similar path that we are. Like, hey, this is really, really very, very nuanced, very difficult to capture. How about we capture something similar that this may, they may tie somewhat loosely together, but achieve some of the same outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful because I do think that those operational indicators, and I know that one of the questions that will come up is, you know, how does council hope to use this type of information? And for many, it's related to trying to make funding decisions, right? So you want to see some indicators to help you to understand why we need that extra FTE, why we need additional trash trucks. And so there may be measures that make sense that from just an operational standpoint that may not jive exactly one-to-one in a way that you need to try to match to the council objectives. And so I just want to make sure that we're not losing sight of that in an effort to have folks capture the data, develop the data around council priorities that are likely to change, keeping in mind capacity as well. Councilmember Schlegel.
Thank you. Mayor, seriously, that was just the coolest question. I mean, that's so great. How do we keep the thing? And I liked what you said about agility in the KPIs. I had a couple of questions. First, I know as a teacher that when you introduce new regimes for data collection and analysis, that introduces new time on task. And so I wanted to know whether you have any kind of industry standard estimate for how much we need to be aware that we're asking of staff in terms of time on task with performance measurement tasks that will eventually come online, and how we need to be aware to adjust our expectations accordingly and not just be piling on to people.
We and I know that Sydney showed a diagram of like resources and like sort of the things that come into play. We're at the design phase now, and it's really going to determine on what system you guys decide to invest in down the future is going to change that time, right? Something as simple as Smartsheets takes, 2 days in the classroom and you can be, proficient enough to use it. Or if I'm training everyone on Tableau, it may take, weeks to train someone. So there's different, depending on what the investment is. And so right now, the management team, they're asking all the right questions, and the department heads are asking these questions. And so when we give our recommendations, it'll kind of be, we're tool agnostic, right? We want whatever's going to be the most efficient based on where you guys are today. If things may change 2 years from now, we're like, oh, we did this in Smartsheet, maybe we can do this better here. So we will show the range, so, and it'll be up to whatever the decision is made by the leadership to which path they want to go down.
Thank you. And I meant to mention also there's the time of orientation for new people or people moving to new positions. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Strickland, can you make sure you speak into the mic? So
I'm sorry. I'm so
folks
sorry.
listening can hear you. And I want to just add to your comments. And Sydney, you pointed it out too, when you were talking about the resources needed for implementation. One of the things that I think we're discovering and having a lot of conversations about in our department level meetings is that there are a lot of metrics that we're interested in collecting data for, but we don't necessarily have the data itself. Right. We don't have the means to collect it, one or the other. And it's aspirational in that sense, and it's something that we will need council support in identifying, once the recommendations come, identifying the ways in which we accumulate those resources in order to make our performance management program more robust. So it is definitely a iterative process in the sense that we'll start, I think, with what we have, what we can capture sooner rather than later. And I think as we begin to invest in the program, we'll see that it is more and more useful to staff, to council, and to the public.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councilmember DeBala.
Yeah, along those lines, I guess I thought it was entirely possible that we were going to do some kind of pilot of a piece of it before we did the full the full performance measures. I hear you talking about the whole package, and so are you recommending that if we're going to invest in all these tools, we might as well do the whole thing at once, or?
To a certain degree, yes. And then, like David mentioned, there are plenty of measures that are not included. So each department is trying to pick a certain amount, no more than 5. Like they're trying to keep it kind of slim so that it reduces that reporting burden. And then we're making sure that it's not a pilot, but that we are, exploring the process and keeping it simple. In terms of if there is a desire to pilot or like prioritize some measures, we can always talk about that more, but we are trying to get a holistic picture of what you would like and what really we would recommend.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I just want to confirm, because it sounds like to me what you're developing is a measurement framework where you're thinking through what are the goals that we need to try to make sure we're measuring. You're going into each of the department to say, okay, what data do you have that we could maybe turn into an ideal measure, or what data do you lack? And then we can make recommendations around how that data could be gathered, and that data could be revised in a way, or that data could be gathered and ultimately provide that measure. But the framework will just basically help people to understand what needs to be measured. And then the work for us will be making sure that the resources are available to enable staff to measure. And once those data are captured, how do we want that data to be disseminated? How do we want it captured, and how do we want it pushed out? And it could be a smart sheet that we're using to capture the data. And if someone knows how to use smart sheet, they could turn it into some kind of public facing dashboard, or we can use some other mechanism. But it sounds like, and I just want to confirm, it sounds like you all are building that framework so that we can know the what, and then start talking about the how, and then show and tell.
Yeah, and we are also providing a report about that how as well. So recommendations for how you would do it, the tools, the cadence, all of the nuances of the systems that some departments are using versus if this metric is manual or captured somewhere else. So we're also trying to help guide y'all into that how, the implementation side. But yeah, that is beyond the scope of this contract.
Great, thank you.
So to finish my questions, thank you. And so just quickly, so when you come back, will you be talking about the tools and also their costs, so we can be thinking about what that looks like? Okay, and then last but not least, can you give a couple more examples? I'm the one that asked about key performance indicators. Could you give a couple more examples so we can, because it, for me, it makes it much more concrete what it is we're trying, and not to commit like this is what we're going to measure, but the kinds of things that this turns out to be that somebody like the director of public works would actually have to be thinking about in order to meet the lofty goals. If just a couple of examples. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we prepared a slide for that in the appendix, and Public Works, as you mentioned, is listed as an example here.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See it before, we just showed it right now.
That was great feedback for us. Yeah, so we included this in the appendix. I believe I mentioned the middle one already, the percentage change in cities' reserve funds. Another example for advancing a community of belonging. So the objective is talking about housing code enforcement actions and outcomes. An example measure would be percentage of the code enforcement cases resolved without escalation.
And so this is great. And so the difference between this and that table of outcomes of outputs, that is in the CAFR, the annual finance report. The difference is that this is actually linked to the goals and the objectives, as opposed to just a chart at the end of a report. Okay, great, thank you.
And those, just to confirm, those indicators that are already incorporated as part of our budget, or those other data that we're already collecting and having to report out on for other purposes, could be leveraged through this process as well, correct? Okay.
Thank you. I'm done. Thanks.
Great. Councilmember, I think she was for Councilmember Landman.
Thank you. This is a very interesting report, and I'm fairly new to this, even though I've been measured, no doubt. When you were talking about, you spoke with the leadership in the different departments, and then you talked about the application of best practice principles as you were developing this. And I would like to understand a little bit better the process involved. Like, are you talking about best practices in terms of data collection and measurement, or best practices in terms of the things that are being measured, as in like when we see percentage of code enforcement cases resolved without escalation, you said you look to best practices. Were you looking to outcomes in comparable places so that the measure would include those objective goals, or was it only with respect to setting up the measuring process? Thank you.
When we looked at peer cities, so cities similar in size and location to Tacoma Park, we were looking at what they were measuring, and so the measures they're showing to some degree the way that they're going about it as well. So that helped inform the way we're structuring these measures, and also the ideas for the types of measures that you might be interested in measuring. Does that answer your question?
I think you're saying that, for example, if the answer to the percent of code enforcement cases, as an example, you're saying other cities also measure that, and that it would be a good indicator of something. But did you also look at what a well-performing city's total would be, or does that come later in some other context than what you are doing, or is that part of what you're setting up at? Maybe that goes to
Councilmember Landman, I just want to make sure I'm clear on your question. So are you talking about baseline setting and target setting?
Yes.
So
I think I am, without knowing what the lingo is. That is probably what I'm talking about, and whether that's part of what you're doing, or whether that comes in some other context, like through the city manager's efforts. I'm not sure.
For baseline and for goals, those conversations have been happening with the departments, right? To understand the nuances of the data, the individual goals you have. If it's 17% for the rainy day fund, making sure that we're tracking to your goal for that, which we know is also based on other kind of best practices and peer research too. So I think a bit of both in answer to your question.
And when it comes to benchmarking against other peer cities, it's something to consider, but I think it's also something to be very cautious of, because every city is structured different. Every city has different priorities, generally and from year to year. And so I think we just have to be careful when we have a performance management tool of being overly reliant on measuring ourselves against other communities, even if they appear to be of same size and of same structure. It's very difficult for city management, the public, to really understand the nuances that go into staffing or the resources that any particular agency is allocating to a initiative or a program.
Thanks. And I do just want to make sure I'm clear that, target setting sometimes can't really happen if you have a measure that you haven't developed yet. And so you have to develop your data set, you have to analyze the data, you have to create that measure that then becomes like your baseline. And you may want to track that for a couple of years before you're ready to establish a target. So those are just some other things that we may want to keep in mind. For those, Councilmember Dabala brought up, budget measures and things we've been tracking for some time. We may be in a decent place with enough data, enough historical data to be able to say, okay, we could look at this and establish some sort of target. But for new measures that are being developed, or measures where we don't currently have data that exists, that would be very difficult to do. Councilmember Honzak.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to seeing your report out. My previous life was doing a lot of PMPs, performance management plans. So this speaking my language. And in fact, I just want to say thank you, Mr. Eubanks, for that very critical point that you made. I think to add to that concept, a thing that comes to mind when I look at these and I think about comparing to other, let's say, cities of similar size, is that the definitions of each of these measures, key performance indicators, and the assumptions that go behind them, particularly in the data sets that we may have access to at any given point in time, could be quite different, unfortunately, than other cities. And so that gets me to my question. I am wondering, will you will you be providing us with, let's say, annexes that would have kind of the detailed information that you are gathering from our staff, such that council would be able to see at least some of the specific types of data, the categories of data, and actually kind of what they are comprised of, so that we can get a little creative too as we look at this and go, oh yeah, I like that idea. That sounds hard. Because to me, the most challenging part of all of this as we begin to move forward on it after you've given us your report is, it's expensive and very, very time consuming to make any changes whatsoever. And so the most efficient pathway most likely is to really pick out just a very, very small number of whatever it is that you put forward, or try to gracefully and artistically almost like try to figure out how we can make a fabric out of what we are already collecting and make the systems align, because it will just be so difficult to do. So will we get to see an annex that would have that level of detail, or do you foresee that just won't really be feasible?
Yeah. So for each measure we have, and even just the brainstormed measures that aren't necessarily being selected for the framework, we have extensive data notes talking about, is this data available? What are some nuances? What was this trying to measure? We've also had notes from the department meetings, and then in the report of the implementation and application specifications, we'll be talking about that too. I'll also say, when we're talking to departments and working with them on these measures, we are thinking about the longevity and the nuance. So maybe we first talk about, just the number of applications for assistance for a rec program, but really it's maybe not the number or the amount, it's the percent of applications approved. And so year over year, you can see that's a more meaningful and long-term measure than an amount or a number. So we're trying to add that nuance too as we're going.
Thank you. Councilmember Schlegel.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely understood your point, Deputy Manager Eubanks. Like we wouldn't want to say, we want to make sure that our streets are cleared of snow faster than Wheeling, West Virginia or something, but I had a question. I'm really curious about how often municipalities will use surveys of residents or simply tallying complaints received as measures. And obviously as soon as you collect that kind of data, you say, well, I think there's a selection bias here, because the people who were upset answered the survey, or the people who had a problem complaining, the people who didn't. And so I was wondering, to what extent are any of the measures that you're thinking about recommending having to do with some of those elements that are more about perception or user experience, such as perception of safety, and to what extent would you caution against incorporating those into a system?
And especially as you think about public safety. I know that's one of the conversations that came up, and a survey is a snapshot in time, right? If I fill it out on Friday, say I'm safe, I get something happened to me, my car gets broken down on Saturday, I'm unsafe. You know what I mean? So surveys, we kind of, is a last resort of a tool, what we recommend, but we do know in some cases that's the only way to capture some information. So our recommendations are going to vary, but I don't know if any of them have hardcore just survey collection in them. I know that was put in front of us before by some of the departments, and that may be the starting point, but that will not be what we recommend going forward as we think about how do you build a true measurement system. That won't be all of it, because that's just a part of it. And the voices of the community is a very important part of it. But shouldn't be the only part of it.
I will say the city in the past did do citywide surveys. As we are talking about aspects of engagement, it might be useful to take a look at those former surveys, and because when we are trying to specifically target some of our more harder to reach populations to get their opinion on certain matters. The survey approach, while not ideal, we were able to leverage that approach to do focus groups, which enabled us to actually hear from a number of our residents who are non-English speakers to get some insights in terms of how they feel the community is serving them. So while it may not be the best approach because it's expensive and you're not going to be able to do it every year and you're going to be basically tracking between surveys, it still may produce something that might be useful for folks to consider in terms of if we want to do another community survey and how we would need to ultimately make sure that the questions align from survey to survey to make sure we're able to make comparisons.
I think Sydney and Rashawn can opine on this too. It actually has come up a lot, I think, in the discussions that we've been having. I can think of maybe even 3 departments where not the past surveys have come up, and the desire to have that qualitative aspect incorporated into the metrics that are implemented in the sooner phases rather than the later. One of the challenges, to your point, has been the consistency with which the city has been able to conduct them. And when it has been the preference of a department, that has been the concern. That if we highlight this as something that we actually want to do, the department heads have been cautious of saying that this is definitely something that we want to see because they're unsure of whether or not the city is going to do it on a regular basis. And so I think if we do, again, have the kind of commitment from city council from a resource standpoint, that is something that we want to see. I think there are a lot of departments that have expressed that they are interested in establishing something like that.
Council member, what?
I'm good.
Are you sure? Okay. Council, we're out of time for this discussion,
this
but
is very
Councilmember
fast.
House.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with where we just took this conversation only because when I think about KPIs, I think about monitoring data and not about evaluation data. And what surveys imply is that you do have funding for an evaluation and that you know the periodicity, et cetera. And given that we are a city council and each council has a choice to budget that or not, I guess, depending on how much it costs, right? I would hope myself that any KPI proposed would not inherently rely on survey data. I'm just a bit confused by that conversation, to be frank, and maybe I'm misinformed.
Well, I think to
Yeah.
Lawan's point, it's a part of what is being considered. So it's not
Right.
it's not the only thing that any
Sure.
department is considering as a KPI. However, customer satisfaction and the ability to deliver a service is very much informed by the qualitative data that we get in a survey and can only capture in a survey.
Yeah.
So it is a nuance that we are still having conversations about. But point well taken, and I think again the response is that it's one of 5 that a department might be considering implementing.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I am excited about this work. It's going to be a great value to the community, and we really appreciate you all coming out. Just
When are they coming back?
Thank you.
May 20.
May 20. Yes.
May 21st.
I feel like I said it when I was reading that laundry list of
Tentative
stuff.
date. It may move a little bit, but that's the intention.
Okay, great. See you soon.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. Just going to do a quick check-in because I know it's a little warm. Does people need a 5-minute break? We can keep powering through. Okay. All right. People we're feeling phantom air at this point. Yeah.
I thought I heard it kick on a couple times.
Yeah.
Daryl trying to kick it on.
We could have a little 5-minute fan break.
All right. Awesome. So let's keep it moving if folks are okay. We're going to move to our voting session. The first item is the first reading ordinance authorizing execution of a grant agreement with the Maryland State Arts Council and expenditure of grant funds for the restoration of the Azalea sculpture, I should say.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Deb McNally here with the Housing and Community Development Department. What?
Thank you.
And so this is the first of 2 grant agreements that we're looking for approval to spend money down on. This one is a $21,200 grant from the Maryland State Arts Council. And in 2014, we had installed a sculpture of an azalea at the corner of Piney Branch and Flower Avenue. And the sculpture now has kind of, over the years, deteriorated. And so what we would like to do is remove it, restore it with the original sculptor, Howard Connolly, and then reinstall it at a location where it'll have a little bit more exposure. And that's the corner of Holton on New Hampshire on the southbound side of the street. So as part of this, our Arts and Humanities Coordinator, Brendan Smith, applied for funding from the state for this grant. And so it is entirely funded by the grant. There is no matching city funds that are part of this project. And so we are looking tonight for the approval of an ordinance that directs staff to execute the grant agreement and spend down the funds.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So with that, before we start discussing, would someone like to move the ordinance authorizing execution of a grant agreement with the Maryland State Arts Council and expenditure of grant funds for the restoration of the azalea structure?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Landman. Do I have a
Second.
second? Thank you, Councilmember Wasilek. Are there any points of discussion? I just will say, I appreciate Councilmember Honzak's desire to continue to make sure that we're prioritizing arts projects and beautification projects in Long Branch and our segment of Long Branch. I do recall that one of the challenges with this particular sculpture at the intersection in which it was located is that there was some that thought that maybe it might have blocked line of sight a little bit. I thought that's what I heard somewhere.
Generally speaking, the larger issue is the fact because the sculpture is mostly see-through, it doesn't stand out or pop. And that is actually one of the things that we're trying to address with the restoration. It's also, the location is a tight area, and so it's a very difficult place. However, we are looking into putting in signage for the city that includes art installation pieces as part of replacing it. We're trying to expand our art footprint, not reduce it.
Councilmember Honzak.
If I may just ask a quick question because I didn't have the answer today. Do we have any idea when the Flower Avenue Bikeway, I'm seeing that Ms. Grigsby is there. I don't know if she knows. Do we have any idea when that's likely to begin or the actual construction?
We can check in on that and get you
Okay,
some
I'm sorry, that's a
estimation.
surprise question.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure that out and I realized that without that answer, I don't really even know what we're talking about time-wise, whether we're talking about a year or more. And I would, a placeholder for everyone, I would love to see us think about what's low-hanging fruit that we could replace the azalea with in the short run that doesn't compromise our longer-term, maybe bigger vision goals once that work has been done. Because I assume it could be a couple of years before that's done, but it would be great if we could, for example, get landscaping or signage before then. And I know I really appreciate all the staff time that's gone into talking about that and looking at different concepts and also the mayor's time and others. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Honzak. Councilmember Schlegel.
Thank you. I've certainly enjoyed seeing the sculpture where it is, and so I will, I'll slightly mourn the loss of it for Ward 5. But I wanted to ask a couple of questions on a practical level. What contributed to the rust and the exposed footing, and how does the plan for reinstallation elsewhere guard against that occurring again in 10 or 11 years?
So the answer is just in general, these materials over time, the wind, rain, snow, everything just corrodes over time and they need touch up. With sculptures like this, it's a little trickier because they are pieces of art and they start to show it a little bit sooner than necessarily bridges or, and those have kind of more set kind of schedules for where there's touch up being done. So in this case, that is part of why we pursue grant funds for these sorts of situations and why there are grant funds available at the state, because they know public art needs restoration over time.
Okay, thank you. And my other question related to the new location, which is that at the south end of the linear park that is the city's linear park?
Correct.
Okay, so in its new location, are there plantings, vegetation behind it that will allow it to pop, as you said? Or are you thinking about what the backdrop for it will be in that location?
Yeah, so as part of the restoration, there is going to be a paneling at the back to help it kind of more quickly catch the eye. And then additionally, it is raised up a bit, so it will, any vegetation kind of like shrubs or brushes below it will not impede its line of sight.
Okay, thank you. I would just say, like, if it's possible to have if the paint itself could be, if there's a different type of paint that would prevent the deterioration due to the elements or delay it, I think it would be great if that hasn't already been looked into, to look into it. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no more hands, given that this is a first reading ordinance, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Landman.
Aye.
Councilmember Dvala.
Yes.
Councilmember Schlegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Honzak.
Abstain?
Councilmember Wesselek.
Aye.
Councilmember Cersey.
Aye.
Okay, the next item is the first reading ordinance authorizing execution of a grant agreement with the Office of Statewide Broadband, Maryland Computer Lab Program, and expenditure of grant funds for the Library Computer Lab. Say that 10 times fast. I bet to say that 10 times fast just today.
Oh my. Yeah, it's the acronyms could be a little bit easier to work through. So yes, this is another grant agreement that we're hoping to spend down very quickly. So that's why we're bringing it forward as an ordinance. This is from the statewide the Office of Statewide Broadband. It is $85,000 that will go to our new library's public computer center. And this is focused on kind of everyone having access to quality electronic services. And so what we're planning to purchase with this are 6 Mac Pro Techs. So these are kind of extremely high-end like Mac PCs with accompanying creative licenses for software like Adobe, that sort of thing, so that individuals can come into our library, our residents can come in and use these to pursue creative passions, that sort of thing. And so this is, once again, there is no required city match, so it's all state dollars. And so we are hoping to execute these grant agreements and then spend down the funds.
Excellent. Are there, okay, we'll go ahead and let's actually move this and then we will open it for discussion. Would someone like to move the first reading ordinance authorizing execution of a grant agreement with the Office of Statewide Broadband, Maryland Computer Lab Program, and expenditure of grant funds for the Library Computer Lab?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Honzak, for moving. Thank you, Councilmember Dvala, for seconding. Let's open the floor for discussion. Councilmember Honzak, I'm sorry, Councilmember Dvala, then Landman, sorry.
So just a quick question. So this is in addition, I think, to what was planned for the library anyway? Or is this a substitute financially for something that was planned for the new library and frees up some other money for something else?
So I might be looking back at our library director who might be able to help answer that question.
Did I explain the question well enough?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, so this is really the Mac Lab more than it is the conventional computer center that we've known previously. So the ownership of the Mac Lab is sort of shared. But yeah, so this is the Mac Lab.
Thank you.
Councilmember Landman? Maybe Jessica Jones would not want to walk so far away. Before I ask the next question, I'm sorry. Thank you, Library Director. I'm interested in that you mentioned it's for creative purposes, and I know Macs can do certain things that other computers can't do. So but they're also different. So we have certain people that service the computers and the users of the computers. Do we have on staff already people ready to sit with a Mac user and provide them services and also maintain them the same way we do for the PCs that I assume are in the other spots in the library? I'm just looking ahead to future expenditures.
Yeah, they will be administered separately. And so the library staff, in particular, at least one member of the computer center staff is pretty well versed in using Macs. But for the most part, this would fall under, historically, it's fallen under the recreation department, who, and City TV has also pitched in with that. The Mac Lab, it's a shared resource, but I am pretty confident that we have enough people that are able to use that software and help people understand how to use it.
From a programmatic standpoint, recreation usually conducts classes to both train people, but also just to assist people that need help.
Councilmember Schlegel?
Thank you. By the way, Mayor, seriously, after introducing that, have you ever thought about a side gig as an auctioneer?
I could at this point.
My question was in the spirit of the grant, addressing the target populations such as the homeless, disabled veterans, and the incarcerated, those reentering society. I was thinking about what are the hours of availability for the Mac Lab, and how can, what thought have been given into how to maximize those hours, even potentially beyond what the library staff or the rec staff can provide. Not sure how much supervision is needed for the area.
So the recreation staff has historically staffed that particular room, and it is usually available on a schedule similar to the library's operating hours. So my hope is that would be consistent once the facility reopens, but I would need to verify that with the recreation department.
Yeah, we do not envision having different hours for the Mac Lab than for the rest of the building, either the community center or the library itself.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no more hands for discussion, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Landman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeBala.
Yes.
Councilmember Schlegel.
Yes.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Honzak.
Aye.
Councilmember Wesselek.
Aye.
Mayor Cersei.
Aye. Okay, we're gonna move into the work session. Let's talk about some air. Procurement of an HVAC control system.
I thought turning off the AC in here was a brilliant maneuver.
I'm like, let's pay for it.
Demonstration of need, yes.
We have those climate goals, so, you know.
Yeah. This, Daryl Braithwaite, Public Works Director, thank you. And my apologies for the system not working tonight. It was working earlier today. So one of our mysteries, and we think potential impact from the electrical surge. So this particular project has been sorely needed for years. Not to put too fine a point on it, but we have a system here in the community center of multiple air handlers, which are in the roofs, rooftop systems, which are on the roof, and then VAV boxes, variable drive boxes that are in the ceiling structures, in addition to a chiller system and a boiler system. All these operate through building hours and all have different ages and different requirements based on the areas that they serve. So we have had a system of controls for those units. The goal being that you want to be able to set the thermostats to automatically turn off, turn down based on use. Also to be aware of
temperature changes in a room, you get a big crowd, then the system feels that increase in temperature and turns itself on or off depending on what you need. We have had a control system on most of our units for the first floor and the second floor. Our third floor has never been a part of a control system. We've had Nest units on those. When we first installed the control systems, we did it in a phased approach. So we did one floor 1 year, the next floor the next year, and we're not able to complete and continue that process. This was delayed several years by the lack of a facility maintenance supervisor. As you can imagine, it's a fairly technical evaluation process. We've had numerous contractors, consultants working with us through the building to try to identify the best systems for us. We put together a bid. We received 4 responses. Of those 4, we found that 3 were responsive. One did not give us the full range of control capacities that we wanted. So what we're recommending this evening is that we pursue the contract with Siemens. They were the lowest bid of the pricing structure that we have. We were pleased with the scope of services they offered. We were also very pleased. They've been in the building multiple times, so they're very aware of our systems and what we're looking for. And we're very optimistic that bringing a new system on board will help both our energy efficiency as well as climate control and comfort in the various rooms and offices that our systems work in. So we're really anxious to get this system updated and fully integrated. So that's what we have in front of you this evening.
Excellent. Quick question, and I know we ask this question a lot. The lowest bid still meets the requirements for ensuring that they're able to complete the job based on your review.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember DeBala.
Similar question. And they are a reputable company and
Siemens, yes,
whatever the reason that
internationally
their bid
known.
was so
Yeah.
much lower, it all still made sense to you. Okay, thank you.
Yes. They all have proprietary portions of their system, so that it does take you a while to sort of read through it and compare and contrast. They are an internationally known company that control systems is part of what they do, as is Boland, as is ABM. So not to disparage any other company, but the contractors that we're looking at for this kind of system really had to be fairly well addressed. This wasn't a small scale mom and pop contractor that could do something like this.
Director Braithwaite, did you already address the fact that the bid is higher than the budget?
No, thanks for pointing that out. This is one of the items that has been in the equipment replacement reserve for quite some time, so there's funding available for that. The cost estimate that we had was based, as I mentioned, on the original system that we purchased, which was not complete. So we had an estimate of, based on our own formula, of a little more than $137,000. That, as it turned out, the lowest bid was about, what is that? Can't do the math anymore. 7,000, 8,000 more than we have available. There are funds in the equipment replacement reserve that can be used to make up that difference, which is, again, critical for why we fund the equipment replacement reserve, so that we have available funds when things come due. So,
In the fiscal 25.
yes, it is this fiscal year. It obviously will, once we sign a contract, they'll order it, get underway. We're hoping to get the system, we don't know on an exact schedule of when all the control systems will be in place. One of the challenges we've had recently is that this control system will connect to each of the units, but the units themselves have their own controllers, and our last electrical system incident has fried many of our controllers within the units themselves, so we'll have to repair those in order for a system to communicate and control those. So our facility maintenance supervisor is going to be very busy for the next few months.
And if council decides to approve this contract, you will see a corresponding budget amendment when we do the last budget amendment for the year for the additional $7,000.
Thank you. Councilmember Hans. No, you keep the hands up. I saw both of your hands, but then you took them down. Okay. So Councilmember Landman was first, then Councilmember
Sorry,
Schlegel.
No, that's okay.
I have two quick questions. The first is I read through the modest little document, which I appreciated simplicity for people like me. It seemed like you're saying that the previous system was installed in 2017, which seems a pretty short time frame. Is that unusually fast for a system to need replacement?
No, these systems are very computer oriented, so 3 to 5 years, they tend to need an upgrade. So a system like this, we would be, and of course, when you upgrade, you're not spending $140,000 or $150,000. You're just upgrading particular modules within the system itself. Our system is completely obsolete. It can't be updated anymore. So it is considered long in the tooth in the control world.
I see. And my second question is that there is now construction planned for the atrium area. How will that be impacted by or have an impact on this project, which appears to be, very much oriented towards different floors of the building and making sure that they're all tied in? It seems like there may be a timeline issue there, if you could touch on that.
Well, the controls themselves, as I mentioned, they integrate and communicate with a central computer. So you're putting in Wi-Fi and connecting lines and controllers. So none of the individual air conditioning units, heating, coolers, chillers, they're all remaining in place. So those aren't changing. So we're just updating the nervous system, for lack of a better word, to communicate with them. So the system then in dispatch is getting old. We do have it scheduled for replacement in FY28, I believe, but we're having it assessed as part of the evaluation of the program. But we'll be able to continue to connect to that. So all the systems, rooftop systems and air handler systems are remaining in place.
Councilmember Schlegel.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you did with the scoping this and everything. And we heard from a lot of people, of course, who talked about the first floor and referenced in various ways air quality issues. And I wondered whether this new control system, in your view, is going to help with any of the air quality issues in the kind of labyrinthine first floor level.
In that, if we determine that we want higher proportions of outside air, the damper controls are definitely a component of a air handling control system. Raising or lowering temperatures, increasing air conditioning. I just want to say that all the city's units are, ever since COVID, we've been running our systems more frequently for a greater air circulation as part of a COVID control measure that we've continued. In addition to that, all our system have MERV 13, which is the highest standard of hospital grade filtration in the systems. So we pay very close attention to air quality. In the police area, we have had some issues with mold. They've been very specific to water leak events, so it's not just a general air quality problem because the air is bad down there. We're getting all the required recycling and fresh air that any facility, regardless of what floor you're on, needs. Those particular incidents have been identified, addressed, and cleaned. We had air quality experts come in, do the testing, do the retesting. So, those issues were very situational and very specific, had a very specific cause. They weren't just general crappy air quality.
Thank you. And on a parallel track, not directly related, but you just mentioned how a surge has caused damage to a number of units. Is there a separate effort underway to put in some kind of surge protection for the whole building?
Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can add a note to that. I've asked David to lead some of the other staff team members in I think what we need to do is procure some expert advice, electrical engineering, we can never predict what will happen from the outside. PEPCO, they work through their issues. How can we better protect our building? How can we better protect our services? And so, we've got 3 generators, we've got 3 circuits. We get impacted differently each time, and we seem to have vulnerabilities. So I think I've asked my team to come together. I believe they're meeting in the next day or two to advise me on perhaps a contractor that we already work with, or perhaps not. But one way or another, I would recommend that we get some comprehensive advice about how we can better insulate ourselves from outside electrical variations when they happen. And so we can be with critical functions like police department and dispatch, and the ability to hold public meetings here, as well as the rest of the building. I think we can perhaps make some adjustments to the infrastructure that we have, but first we need some expert advice. So we'll be working on that.
And I just wanted to say, we do have surge protection, as you might have in your own house. You have people plug their computers into a surge strip to protect. This is exactly why we have surge protection within the building. We have power conditioning within the building, but clearly insufficient for what it experienced. So that's one of the things that we'll be asking, someone with that background to take a look at, sort of how do we supersize what we've got, because clearly it was not sufficient.
Councilmember Landman.
This is a follow-up to the question that you just raised, City Manager, and it doesn't relate directly to what you're here to talk about originally, but it does relate to the surge protection problem. We are located across the street from a Pepco building full of who knows what. It's mysterious. You can't go near it. But all around, the neighbors were also impacted by the same surge. I myself was impacted. I'm a little further away. It wasn't like a tree fell on the wires. Something significant is going on, and I know you are exploring that with the city, but I'd just like to put it on the city manager's radar as well, that a number of residents are also gathering data, and I would like for the city to not assume that we have to put up with Pepco's problems and treat it as if, okay, well, maybe we have insurance, but I think it's important that we consider what our legal options might be, because it was sufficient problem that it affected a lot of people, and it's they're taking a rather cavalier attitude towards it. A lot of people had a lot of damage, as well as the city. So perhaps that's something we can get together on and talk about at some future date.
The team is documenting all of the damage, certainly collecting information to the extent that we can meet with Pepco in the near future. We're trying to arrange a meeting with Mr. Zagata, and we certainly are willing to elevate that conversation to other levels of influence, politically and administratively. We have repeated problems, and not just we, the city government, but as you said, absolutely some of the residents and maybe some businesses in the area. And it seems to be something that we're just all losing confidence in their infrastructure. So we need to, that's on a separate track, but it's an important one, and you raised a very good point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are at,
I'm sorry, I had a question, but somehow we went back to the.
okay, Councilmember Hanzak.
I'm sorry. Thank you. 3 things. One, following up on Councilmember Landman's, I wonder if it would be therefore useful now if the city might put something in the newsletter to ask residents to collect receipts for any repairs that they had to make following the surge with dates, just if in case there should be a lawsuit at some point. And then second, that doesn't any response, just something, food for thought. And then I was wondering, Director Braithwaite, will this item that we're talking about today, would that cover any of these repairs, or is it's just totally a separate item? So we might see that later. Okay, and then do you think there's any reason that we would consider delaying this kind of systemic upgrade just a little bit until we at least do an assessment of the vulnerabilities? Or once again, do you feel like it's just so separate? I would just hate to see us possibly not recuperate these funds from Pepco and then put out the funding and then have the surge again, do something in the near term.
Yeah, they're really apples and oranges. The
Okay,
control
okay.
system is kind of
Thank you.
like, think of a central brain for like your thermostat. It controls the thermostats, as well as dampers and a whole bunch of other things. So that system needs to work well anyway, and we'll always need that type of control system. It also enables our facility maintenance people to get alarms before a system shuts down, so they can know if something's going on and it's remote. You can get access to it. You can diagnose through it. So all that stuff is really valuable. The issue of air handlers and lighting systems and whatnot being affected by the surge, it's really a entirely different thing. We will need to get all our pieces of equipment that are going to be controlled fully operational. It won't stop the work from running the connections and connecting it up, but it won't be able to do its job until those systems are working. We're working now to get all the units that were damaged repaired and replaced. We will be tracking those costs, and we're getting proposals from our HVAC companies and our generator company and electrical contractors that we work with. So we will be tracking all that and making our best effort at a claim both with Pepco and or with our insurer. There's been some discussion about raising this with the Public Service Commission if we're not satisfied with Pepco's handling of the matter.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think I was well heard, but I was talking also about the residents collecting receipts. I know, just for example, my folks who live on Grant Avenue, like you were saying, they just explained several $100s worth of expense that they need to call attention to kind of get a sense of the scale, and if someone does decide to file a lawsuit. Thank you.
We do have a plan with Hodges Heights to meet on Sunday to talk about how we are going to gather together the data from affected community members.
okay.
So that that's on our radar.
Great. Thank you so much. I do want to keep us discussing the topics that are on the agenda. So we're moving to our last item, which is a contract for the Ward 6 traffic study.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Casey-Ann Webley. For those who don't know me as yet, I'm the transit planner with the HCD department. And today I would like to just recap the traffic study RFP and propose or recommendation for the selected or preferred contractor. So at the direction of the council, we put forward a request for proposals on March 3rd for comprehensive traffic study within the New Hampshire Gardens community area of Ward 6. We received 5 competitive bids on the closing of March 31st. That was then reviewed by a technical selection committee comprised of 2 members from the planning department, 2 from Public Works, and 1 from the police department. The proposals were reviewed based on responsiveness, demonstration of history of completing similar projects, qualifications and experience, client references, and proposed cost. The 2025 budget allocated $50,000 towards this effort, and the selected bid comes to a cost of $59,766. And that is above the allocated cost, but we're also looking to cover that difference from the 2026 budget, which is budgeted at $75,000 or proposed at $75,000. So based on the review of the proposals, the selection committee is recommending the city enter into a contract with Tool Design. In the review, they provided the most responsive proposal, and it was also cost competitive in regards to the scope of services that they proposed for. They have experience with the city and extensive experience within Montgomery County and the State Highway Administration. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that I'm clear because I know as part of the FY26 budget, the Hammond traffic study was what came up, and I know that there were lots of questions, kind of like will they, won't they, kind of pick up Hammond. So do we have, based on this proposal, some thoughts regarding whether or not Hammond could potentially be within scope of this project?
Yeah, so we've been in discussions with Tool, particularly about Hammond, that came out of that traffic calming study. And based on some feedback we're getting, we're not expecting that to need to come to council with that budgeted amount. So we're already looking at it so that we can tag it on to this proposal.
Okay.
And just to clarify, what we released this RFP with a full scope before we had had discussions about Hammond. So this contract will have that, and then what we will do is amend the contract to add in the work regarding Hammond.
Okay. And then for the purpose, I'm looking at Deputy City Manager Eubanks because you'll know this better than me. So for the purpose of the budget for FY26, we should keep those funds in the budget, but we would ultimately receive a budget amendment where any funds that were earmarked, that were included in the budget for Hammond, once we get all of this finalized in terms of the contracting for FY26, we would see that in a budget amendment, correct? Where we would
We
lower that
shouldn't need
amount.
to see it in the budget amendment. It was identified for Hammond, so it can be incorporated into this project because this project is incorporating Hammond. So you should be fine.
Okay. I'm just trying to think because we're spanning 2 fiscal years.
Yeah.
We can talk about that offline. I just want to make sure we do it right.
I don't think we need to see a budget amendment. I
Okay.
think we should be okay.
The only budget amendment you'll see is when we are pulling forward FY25 funds into FY26.
Okay.
I'm sorry if that's what you meant.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to figure out, we have this project that's spanning 2 fiscal years. How do we reconcile the money and which fiscal year does it belong in? That's what I was trying to figure out. So I'm like, if we have to move something from 26 to make it 25, then we'd have to do that. But it doesn't sound like it. We're going to move the 25 to 26. The whole pot of money will be there. We'll do this project. People in New Hampshire Gardens will be happy. And then when the dust settles, we'll kind of know where we're laying in terms of the final dollars. Excellent. Councilmember Westlake?
Thank you so much. Just for clarification then, so this 59,000 roughly figure, that is where we think it will land in the end, or I know
would
we
be
have
an
the funding.
additional amount to that 59.
It will be more than that. Okay,
Right.
Great. That's great. Yeah, I really appreciate all the hard work on this. I know I've had a lot of conversations with staff. It really means a lot to the residents here to do a really thorough and comprehensive job on that whole neighborhood. So we really look forward to working with you all on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Westlake. Councilmember Schlegel?
Thank you. I had questions. I see that the study looks on various scales, looks at particular danger points that might be, a particular crossing of a street or a stop sign. And then it looks on the scale of the neighborhood. And then it also is going to be cognizant of potential spillover effects. Like if you move traffic somewhere else, then how is it affecting, say, people coming up Sligo and then up Flower and everything? When I saw that this was, you're recommending Tool Design Group, I remember that several years back, they did a study of the areas south of the junction, Columbia Avenue and Sycamore were streets. They were trying to figure out how many cars how was the bypassing of the Sycamore Avenue traffic light functioning? And studying that traffic study closely that surrounded the junction, I was disappointed on 2 counts at the time. One was that the design group, they chose, I believe they chose 10 intersections, and there were other intersections that they might have chosen that could have provided additional data on what was happening broadly in the corridor. And so I'm concerned very much about getting the scope right in the final agreement with them, that, for example, if they were leaving out entry point to the neighborhood at Merwood, for example, maybe, people might say, yeah, I see that data, but they didn't measure this entry point, left turns into there, something like that. So scope of number of intersections to be sure that it's comprehensive, particularly regarding the entry and exit points of the neighborhood. And then also like attention to spillover, like I mentioned, impacts on Flower Avenue on the other side of Long Branch, just because then you could have things blow up if they make recommendations and people say, but they didn't look at how it's going to affect us. And so those were two concerns I had. And I also just noticed that there's no total no clear statement of objective for the whole study. And so it leaves me wondering, is there an implicit objective here to reduce cut-through traffic in the neighborhood, or is it to handle cut-through traffic in the neighborhood? You know, there's a little nuance there.
So, well, thanks for pointing out that part, Rich. So that's something I'll keep in mind as we have our engagement with the consultant and with the community. So we're having an initial kickoff meeting, which will bring the voices of the community to the consultant so that we can have an overall picture of what's going on in the community, along with data that we've collected and data that will be collected. And so with regards to the objective of the study, there are a few objectives. We want to improve pedestrian safety and improve safety for all road users. And that will include things that will handle traffic volume and speed. So while we can't control the behavior of drivers on the road, we may be able to use infrastructure or design elements to deter persons from entering the community. But like I said, we can't control driver behavior. Also, we're expecting that when the Purple Line construction is completed, that will have a reduction in the cut-through traffic. Of course, that will be seen when the project ends, but that's the expectation.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Seeing no more questions, it looks like we are done for the evening, and we are not going till 2:30 tonight. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic evening.
Awesome.